Hello there, friends. My name is Scott Wakefield, lead pastor at First Christian Church of Greene County, and today I am with...
Daniel.
And Meredith, Shrader.
You're like, Daniel didn't include the last name, therefore I will. And we're going to have a
Coffee
Convo.
Yay.
Yay. Coffee Convos is a chance to sit down with some good friends and to talk about the work of God in their lives. And so we're glad that y'all have joined us. Thanks.
We're glad to be here.
So let's start off in the deep end. What do you guys fight about most often? Just kidding. Let's save that for later. Give us a brief bio and history. I mean, let's just go for the jugular. Who are you and where are you from? And give us a brief bio of whatever you see fit to include in that bio.
Ours or yours or mine?
Yep, sounds good.
Probably yours. Go first.
Okay, so I'm originally from Eastern North Carolina. I grew up in a Christian home with dysfunctional churches. Every pastor that I had, from birth to age 20, cheated on his wife, stole money from the church, lied about something significant. All of them were wicked men.
You rattled that off
I mean,
as if
this is
you've thought about
how
this.
I became who I am.
And
I understand.
Gotcha.
And
Yes.
God did. I became a believer when I was 15. I went to Christian school all the way through, but I didn't know Jesus until I was a teenager. And a friend of mine said, Christianity isn't about like going to church. And I was convinced the church was full of hypocrites, and I went to all sorts of dysfunctional churches, and I was at a Christian school with all sorts of hypocrites. And so I was pretty skeptical, but I hit a place in life where I was frustrated with all of my circumstances, and a friend of mine said, you don't have a relationship with Jesus. And I gave my heart to Christ and began to grow in my walk with the Lord. And but it really wasn't until college, in my mid-20s, early 20s, when some friends reached out and said, hey, why don't you come to Campus Crusade with us? And I put them off for a year and eventually just said, okay, I need to do something to try to grow in my walk with Jesus. And so I went to Cru, and I got around this group of guys who loved Jesus, were growing in their walks with the Lord, reading their Bibles, and sharing their faith. And I thought, this is different. It's kind of neat, kind of refreshing.
Yeah.
And middle of that, decided to go on my first mission trip, and did a couple of summer mission projects in Myrtle Beach. Learned how to share my faith talking to drunk guys on the beach. Hey, we're going to go walk to this guy's drinking beer, and we're going to talk to them about Jesus. Sure. What's the worst case they can say? Get out, man. So, but I remember learning how to share my faith with these guys, going, this might not be the most effective method of evangelism, but your fear of rejection goes down pretty greatly. You're just kind of
It's
like,
good
hey,
training
it's good
for that,
practice.
huh? Yeah,
What's the worst case they're going to say? Get out. Okay, we're going down to the next group. And
Cool.
ultimately, God called me into ministry in the middle of that, and I was in the middle of my first degree's in physics, so I was in the middle of a physics degree, and decided I would finish. So I finished my physics degree. Decided to go on. Knew I wanted to go into ministry. My best friend and I were planning to go to seminary, and he couldn't go, so we decided, hey, we're going to go intern at a church. Interned at a church in Texas and learned a lot about missions and ministry. Went to Russia as a missionary. Spent 2 years on staff with Campus Crusade doing missions work with college kids. The question in there is like, I learned to speak Russian living in Russia. As a full-time language student, sharing my faith with Russian students.
Yeah.
At the very end, Meredith came over.
Dun, 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 dun.
I was doing
I knew this would get to Meredith eventually.
planes, trains, and automobiles. Like, I was the admin guy for the short-term mission team coming for the summer.
Yes. And lo and behold,
I met my wife at a Russian train station. So Meredith came in, and
it's kind of a cool story to be able to start out with.
Yeah.
I met my wife at a Russian train station.
that's exactly right. So at this point, you should add your background, because that gets us to us at least.
Okay, so I grew up in a Christian home in North Carolina. I'm an only child, which is an important detail.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in a very traditional kind of legalistic background. So I knew at an early age, from the age of 9, that I didn't want to go to hell. I believed in Jesus, that he was the Son of God, and he was going to keep me out of hell. But I didn't understand that it was a walking with him daily, a relationship with him.
Right.
I honestly thought it was this one-time decision that you made, and then
Yep.
you just kind of went on
Yep.
with your life. So when I got to college, Campus Crusade for Christ was very influential in my life.
Yes. Now called Crew, which you
It's
said
now
earlier,
called
in
Crew.
case those of y'all who listening don't know. CRU is the same thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
I finally was introduced to women who love Jesus, and they explained to me that it really is walking with Christ daily. It's not just a one-time decision that you make. And so I really began to grow, learning how to spend time with God in the Word and prayer and share my faith. And I am basically living a life that I never planned to live. You
Yeah.
know, so
Meaning,
well, I went to school, so I was biology major,
Yeah.
and I'm a physician assistant.
Mhm.
I have a master's in physician assistant studies. Basically, plan to have no kids to maybe one kid and be a full-time
PA.
working mom
yeah,
as a PA.
yeah.
And now I'm homeschooling with 3 kids and staying at home. So,
And your kids are kept in very good physical health,
Yes.
thanks to your
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
they are in very good
Expertise.
physical health.
Cool.
So went to East Carolina University and went on a couple mission trips, short term, but where he said we met. So I decided I was actually supposed to go to Argentina. So how God twists things.
You
and
were
rear-
supposed to go to
I
Argentina,
was
not
supposed to go
Russia.
Argentina instead of Russia for a mission trip. And then at the last minute, they had a huge need in Russia on this particular mission trip for women.
Yeah,
So I changed location for where I was going.
cool.
It's my fault.
Yeah.
And so they were coming to host a English camp.
Mm-hmm.
We had done all of the interviews. So our group in country did all the interviews with Russian students, and basically
To set up
the
yeah,
camp.
right.
And like the gist of the idea is you want them to be able to speak enough English that an American who doesn't speak any Russian can share the gospel with them and they understand.
Oh.
So we did these long interviews with hundreds of students.
Yeah.
Like, at which point, we had this huge contingent of women ready to go to English camp and a handful of guys because there's just more English-speaking women. Like, and we're like, we need more girls on your team because we can't pair the Russian women and the American dudes. That just don't work. So,
So it was you.
It was me.
You summoned me.
even that, it's like, hey, send us more help.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
God was providential in bringing you to Russia to meet me.
And when we met, to be clear,
Yes, please be clear.
my very first thought,
Yes,
we walked up in a Russian
do
train,
share.
I said, hello, I know your brother Josh, can you get me a paquette, which is like a grocery bag, like a
Oh, okay.
little,
Yeah, yeah.
and then he was like, yes, and we proceeded to talk, and my very first thought was, he's cute, but this could never work because he talks way too much.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
And we've been talking ever since.
And I know he's been talking ever since.
We've been talking ever since.
Good stuff. So speaking of y'all, we often will ask people some things about them, like, "Hey, are you a early riser, late partier?" Those kinds of things. You know, favorite cereal, etc. But given that we've got y'all here and you're married, let's do this for one another.
Sure.
Speed
Fair.
round.
Okay.
All right. Early riser or late partier?
Oh, she's late, man. Not early.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Him?
True. He's an early riser, but by necessity.
Meaning what?
Meaning, like, if he didn't have to get up as early, like, and do all the morning stuff, he would probably sleep in a little later.
Meaning she breathes fire before 8 a.m. so the children cannot see her. So
It's true.
so, like, I get up to deal with the small people,
Yep.
like, and make sure they're fed.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So that you can deal with the small people the rest of the day.
That's
That's
right.
right.
Yes,
I need
yes.
a lot of Jesus before I see them.
Yes.
And
Yes.
coffee.
And coffee.
Coffee.
That's good.
Um,
Yes, I feel the same way. You guys don't know how many hours I've been doing Jesus and coffee before I'm talking to you now. I'm just kidding. So breakfast or dinner? Which do you
Dinner.
like? Her favorite's dinner?
dinner.
Really?
Hey,
Breakfast for dinner.
no, that.
That's his thing?
No, I would
Oh, that's
say
that's
his
yours?
is definitely dinner. I would say mine would be breakfast for dinner.
Mine
But,
is too. I
yeah.
love breakfast for dinner. I
That's
like
right.
breakfast for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah, all the time.
It's just bacon.
Bacon.
Like, as long as she gets bacon or a biscuit, like, she's good.
Yeah? How about your favorite breakfast? Bacon, biscuit, normal, regular old?
Definitely bacon and biscuits. Like, my favorite thing of all time still is a bacon and cheese biscuit from Aubrey's in Wendell, North Carolina.
Wow, that's specific.
Yep.
Yes,
That is specific. And your favorite dinner foods?
Cheeseburgers and French fries.
We're healthy people here.
Sorry, I could.
That's quite all right. That's
And she could have answered that for me. Like, no question.
all right.
We're easy.
All right. Again, for one another. Introvert or extrovert?
They don't get much further to the introverted side of the spectrum than my wife. She is way over here.
Thus, the Jesus and coffee.
Yeah.
Before the kids. Okay.
He is smack dab in the middle, truly.
Okay.
He is probably slightly more extroverted leaning, but he's pretty.
I'm an ambivert.
Yeah,
I'm
he
a
calls
weirdo.
himself an ambivert.
I'm a weirdo.
A both vert.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Ambivert. How about thinker or feeler? Not that those have to be very
Thinker.
different. He's
Definitely
a thinker.
not a feeler.
And you're what? What did you say she
I'm a
is?
feeler. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's no question. She's a feeler, and I'm a thinker.
Yeah.
I mean, she called that absolutely.
Okay. All right.
I don't do feelings well.
Why? What? like,
She says
tell
I
us-
have the
tell us
empathy of a
more.
rock.
Tell us
Maybe
more.
a little more empathy than a rock.
Where does that come from? Why? I'm just kidding.
I
don't
see
want to
the
know.
world in
Just
black and
kidding. We don't have time to unpack that silliness. Let's move on. Fighter or peacemaker? Which is she? Fighter or if you had to pick one, and we're making it this way. I realize life is full of grays.
She's a
Blah
fighter,
blah
dear.
blah.
She's a fighter.
Okay.
Like, and she knows this.
It's true.
Like,
All
she
right.
is a fighter.
Over what kinds of things? How so? What do you feel the need to fight for or about?
I tend to I tend to hold a lot of things loosely, but the things that I hold very tightly, I
Like.
hold very tightly.
Like
What would
Like,
I'm
children
trying to think
shouldn't
like
be
when
allowed
we're-
to speak before 8 a.m.
what?
I said, like, children shouldn't be allowed to speak
Yes.
before 8 a.m.
yes, we should hear no kids' voices.
Well, I mean, like Jesus, the Bible, certain like parenting, beliefs or, yeah. So like personal convictions, I hold very tightly. I don't know. You know those things in marriage that you like develop over time, like your.
This is how it ought to be
This
done.
is how it ought
I
to
have
be.
no idea.
We have this pattern. This is how it ought to be. Like,
Yeah.
and yes,
Oh, okay.
dear are magic words.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And you are according to you, he is a.
I would say, I mean, you're definitely not a fighter. You're a peacemaker, but I would say you're probably an avoider.
That is true. It's exactly what I was thinking. So,
Yes, yes.
It's like,
I was
I'm
like,
an
you're
avoider.
not really a peacemaker. You're kind of an avoider.
Like, I'm an avoider. I do not like conflict. Like, and I will make peace by avoiding. Like, hey, okay, this is not worth fighting about, so I'm just
Yeah.
going to go around it.
How does that work for you?
Not well.
And how do you feel in those moments? I'm just kidding. We don't want to know. Again, we don't have time for that. We don't want to know. More questions.
Uh-huh.
And then let's get back to the work of God in your lives and ministry and wedding venue and missions and kids. We know now how you know Russian. That was one of our questions. That was sent in here. How do you know Russian? You have 3 kids.
3 kids. Lily is 11 in 6th grade, and Hosea is 8 in 2nd grade, and Janessa is 3. So
Lovely.
she's our little surprise.
Lily comes out every morning. She's like, "Hi, Pastor Scott. I served today." I'm like, let's see. These are some serious questions. Serious questions.
They all want to know the serious things.
We'll get there,
Sure.
and we will not let you avoid them.
It's fine.
We're pretty much an open book.
Okay. What do you do to relax and recharge? That's a question we have here.
Are we supposed to answer for each other again?
No, go
No.
for yourself.
Go for
We're
yourself.
done with.
I know
we're
what
done.
you mean, but
I work on projects.
You're a project guy.
So current project is cleaning up a fence row. So like on my days off when I get them, I typically have a chainsaw and a weed eater, and I am cleaning up a fence row.
Haven't you been on that project for a while?
Like, because I don't get very many days off.
Okay, all right.
So,
Yes.
like,
I'm not one to talk.
I've been at that project since November, but I've only actually taken off 4 days since then. So I've had 4 days to work on it.
It's a very long.
It's a long,
It's very long.
and it's it's 3,000 feet. It's long.
Yeah, I figured it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would be in isolation, alone, outside with a good book, in a hammock.
A good book in a hammock
Not in the winter, but
with a nice cool breeze,
yeah.
cup of lemonade or sweet
Yeah.
tea. What kind of book?
I typically love to read like kind of the inspirational, what is it? It's fiction.
It's fiction. Dude.
So I like series like Karen Kingsbury is one of my favorite authors.
Gotcha.
Rachel Hawk is also another one. They have they're encouraging stories. They keep God at the focus, but they're fiction books, just fun reads.
Yeah.
In my current season of life, I just don't do serious reads because I don't have the brain power to.
To do Regent and serious books.
Yes, I understand that.
Yes.
Yes. How's Regen going, y'all? Tell the world.
It's fantastic. It's very painful.
It's a good pain.
It's a good pain.
It is a good pain.
It's like, wow, I now have all of these idols that I didn't know were here. Ouch. Like, full disclosure, we didn't come to Regen because of the normal reasons. Like, so Regen, like, what is, like, even in the curriculum, it's like, what was the pain point that brought you to Regen? Like, what's your addiction recovery thing? And, like, I didn't have one. Like, I wasn't recovering from anything that I
Other
knew
than
of.
sin. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, like,
Yes.
even then, like, we went to Regen to build community, to get to know folks here, and because they're invariably,
us to.
and Scott told us
I
to.
thought it
I'm
would be
trying-
a good place for you to start getting connected. That's
fair.
all.
Like, they told us, like, so now I have this, like, today's question this morning was, so what things has God revealed? And I have this whole list of, like,
Things God's revealed to you.
revealed to me, these new, like, idols that are present in my life. I
Yeah.
worship comfort. Like, it's a big deal, and it
Yeah,
permeates all these different fun areas.
Right.
So,
I think
And the cool thing about that process is, I mean, it's deeply done over enough time
yes.
that it forces you to name those things and see some patterns in a bunch of different places. That, you could have said something like that before.
Yeah.
Duh. But to sit down and think about how that manifests itself in one's life in a bunch of different ways, that's a different animal. Most people don't sit there and reflect in those kinds of ways.
No, and
Yeah.
Regen has really forced that. So,
Right,
like,
exactly.
you ask, how is Regen? Well, like, it's helping my walk with Jesus. Like, I've got all sorts of things I'm now repenting of that I wasn't before.
yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good.
It's,
That's right. That's a good way to say
It's
it.
been,
I would absolutely encourage everyone to go because
Yeah.
I will confess, like, my background, I'm a physician assistant. I have 12 years, 11 years working in mental health. And so when we came, like, the recovery lingo was difficult for me because I associated recovery with, like, alcohol, drugs,
Substance abuse.
Yes, substance abuse, just because,
Illegal stuff.
yeah, that's the background that I have.
Right.
So it's a little, honestly, like, there was a little pride of, like, I'm not in recovery from these things. Like, what do I
Right.
need to come for?
Yeah.
But it's been so good to really be able to identify sin issues that maybe you knew about or
Right.
maybe you didn't know about or
Right.
weren't, wouldn't put a name to them. So it really is just for anyone who wants to draw closer to the Lord.
Yes,
And,
that's
you know,
right. And that's why we
work
call it
on-
our main discipleship training program.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like how to grow in your spiritual walk with God. And of course, we sort of put a focus on your own stuff. But it's not just your own sins, it's the sins of others against you,
Yeah.
and seeing a lot of patterns in those ways too. It's really helpful for
Yeah,
both of those
absolutely.
directions. Yeah. Good stuff. So you all run I almost said, you all won a wedding venue.
Won a wedding.
You run a wedding venue. How did that happen? What is it? How's it going? How's that fence row?
So, you want me to answer or start and you
Yes.
can fill in?
you tell.
Our
And
story of just where God has brought us is so crazy, but And there's definitely not enough time here for it. But originally, how it began was we wanted a farm for our kids. We wanted a place we wanted more land where they could run and play, where we could
A place of family, solitude.
yeah, family, solitude, all those things, because we both enjoy nature and solitude, and so that was important.
There'll always be a fence row that needs cleaning forever.
It's
So-
all thorns and thistles. I mean, there's a lot of weeding that's
a lot.
involved in a
Exactly right.
world of thorns and thistles.
And so this was like before Janessa was born. We had, like, one thing we would do after church on Sundays is we would drive around and look for farms for sale.
Cool.
We would just,
Yeah.
that was our Sunday afternoon with the
Yeah.
kids. They would grice and groan about going, but we would take them and go.
Yeah.
And so we found this farm, and then we are kind of serial entrepreneurs, so we knew that if we were going to have a farm, it had to have a way to pay for itself.
Right.
And we looked at lots of different things, having animals, growing crops, different things that we could do. And we were like, well, we liked wedding cake.
I mean,
That's
true story.
That's
Like-
an interesting start
Well,
into,
we had
into a wedding venue.
we had sort of joked, because we loved going to weddings. We would get excited about the wedding cake.
Yeah.
And we joked that maybe in our 50s or 60s we could open up a wedding venue because we could eat wedding cake all the time. It was like this joke. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a serious
Yes.
joke in our house. And so the two kind of
The
merged in
joke
that.
took a turn.
Jokes in a turn in the providence of God.
Yeah.
So we
Um,
found this farm that we really loved, and
Yeah.
it had this existing building on it. And so we were like, well, maybe we could go ahead and turn it into a wedding venue. Now, to be clear, we thought this was going to be like a part-time gig for Meredith while Daniel works in ministry.
Right.
That was the original, plan.
I was going to ask some of that next
Yeah.
because it's not like this just happened out of nowhere.
Yeah.
As you talked about, you'd been discussing a lot of these things
Yeah.
while doing ministry.
Right.
Well,
yes.
and Meredith has always had a side gig. Like, I mean, even though she says she's a stay-at-home mom with 3 kids, that's true. Like, she has, for 11 years, she worked in mental health in some version of opened her own practices. Like, Meredith doesn't like working for anybody. Like, she likes being her own boss. A few years ago, she decided, I'm done with mental health, I need something else. So she started a clothing business. Like, she said, I want to sell clothes. And I said, sure. Okay. Like my physician assistant wife, who's never sold anything in her life, is like, I'm going to open a clothing business and sell clothes. And I was like, okay, sure. Okay, we'll try it. She was really good at it.
Sometimes it's nice to be married to a peacemaker who doesn't want to. Yeah.
So she sold a lot of clothes. I mean, just
Cool.
an insane
Yeah.
amount.
Yeah.
And then decided I can't do this anymore. So this is the other piece of the venue story. Is like she wanted a business where she could work, but not always be the face. Like in the clothing business, we were selling online. She was
Right,
doing
right.
like she was always
And
on.
you're part of the brand.
And
Well-
you are the
Obviously,
brand.
yeah.
And
Like,
Janessa was very young. I mean, she had just been born and she was like 1, but I was still rocking her to sleep some nights, and I worked at night. Like, that was when we would go live and sell clothes, and it was harder and harder to work at night.
yeah.
So,
So the wedding venue was something where theoretically we could hire people to run it. Like so she could run pieces and we could hire employees and eventually it would pay for the farm and help fund retirement one day. So it wasn't actually our plan to operate a wedding venue on a day-over-day, week-over-week basis.
yeah, we really thought it would be, this is the things you get into, and you think it's going to be one way, and it turns out to be another. We
Yes.
thought it was going to be a part-time, 20 hours a week tops. No, it's a full-time animal.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you all hit it at a time when people, that's where they go.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't hardly come to us
Well,
to do it here in this
sort of.
building.
Yes.
Like, we actually opened in July of 2020. So we opened a wedding venue right smack dab in the front end of a pandemic.
Right.
That was
Was-
planned.
Probably not ideal.
Not by y'all, apparently.
Not really.
Like,
Yeah.
there was a whole lot of panic in May of 2020 over whether or not we were going to go bankrupt because everything was shutting down and we were opening up.
And you had just
built
gotten
on
into
gathering.
it.
Oh, like we weren't even open yet, and we were losing
Crazy.
money month over month trying
Crazy.
to. Yeah, it was
But
terrifying.
a neat story of how God provided in the middle of that, and
Yeah.
just to encourage like that He's always providing. When we were people weren't having events. There was another local congregation that had outgrown their space and needed a place to meet just temporarily until they found a new building. And So it perfectly took care of our financial needs.
Cool.
But we were able to bless them because
Yeah.
they had a meeting space. And so God took care of his people, two different groups of his people through one space. It was really encouraging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Super cool.
yeah.
So, take us back a little
Yes.
bit. Tell us a bit about ministry years, what you all have been doing in ministry, and then we'll wrap up with some what have you learned in life and ministry and wedding venue and parenting and
So
all those
we'll
good
rewind
things.
just a bit. So
Yeah.
pick up at the train station. So
Yeah.
Back to the train
back to the train
station.
station. Met her. She was really neat. We started dating that fall. But I really wanted to go back to Russia. I wanted to go do pastor and church leader training in Russia.
Uh-huh.
I speak fluent Russian, met some neat people there, and went to a missionary training program, spent 18 months learning how to go serve
Was
overseas.
this before seminary?
Before seminary.
Right, okay.
She was in graduate school, so she was in PA school.
Uh-huh.
So we were dating distance. I was doing missions training, and preparing to go overseas. And she knew that marrying me meant we're going to Russia. I mean, that's kind of you have to understand that we're a package deal, because I'm going overseas, and we got married. And the missions agency we're going on staff with says, you really need to be married for at least a year before we let you go overseas.
Which is very
Which is
common.
wise, common.
Yeah.
At which point, I had actually not ever gotten to seminary at that point. We had talked about it, but never gone. So I decided now's time. So I went and did seminary, and she worked for a couple of years.
Okay.
So plans still go to Russia. So we had actually gone and visited Russia as a married couple, and started raising our support to go overseas right before graduation. And 4 months into raising support, so this is 2010, I'm about to graduate from seminary, and we're
At
going to Russia.
Southeastern?
At Southeastern.
Yeah.
And Adam, who is the field director, the missionary there we're joining, calls me and he says, Putin changed the visa laws and we're all getting thrown out.
That's right, yes.
And
That's
so
right. I'd
you
forgotten
need a
that
new
part.
plan.
Yeah.
I'm like, I've been on this plan for 6 years, Lord.
I've been working on this. I'm still paying. We'll be paying for this plan for, yeah.
That's right. And so what are we doing? So back to the drawing board, and at the time, Denton Bible, who was our sending church
Denton Bible is in Texas.
in Texas.
Yeah.
Denton Bible is a non-denominational church in Texas that has its own sending agency in-house. And so we were going on staff with them, and they said, look, we have these two families in East Tennessee that are running a benevolence ministry, or three actually. They were running one in Greenville, one in Johnson City, one in Kingsport. And they said, but we have a heart to do pastor and church leader training. There's lots of pastors in East Tennessee that don't have any formal training, and we would love for you to come alongside Bill and Charlie and figure out, how do we do training with rural pastors? How do we create access points? How do we leverage the relationships that they've built doing benevolence ministry
Right.
to do some pastor and church leader training? And I said, sure, that sounds great. It's only 400 miles-ish from home, and which put my in-laws' minds at ease, because we were taking her only child to East Tennessee instead of to Russia.
Yes.
So only
Yes.
grandchildren going to
Right.
East Tennessee instead
That's
of to
some of that
Russia. So
only
there was
child thing
some
that
of the
came
only,
back
that's right.
around
Some of
there,
that
yes.
only child thing comes back around. They were okay with us going to Russia, but they were not yay, And
Your parents are like, Putin may have changed it, but I'm glad.
yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. I feel like we were praying against each other.
Definitely. And so in 2011, with a then 1-year-old, we moved to Greenville, Tennessee, to do missions, and intentionally with a focus on doing pastor and church leader training was why we came.
Right.
Which
And
changed
what
the
happened quickly was...
The week we got here,
Yes.
one of the other team members said, hey, we're glad you're here, we're leaving. And so this benevolence ministry that we've been running, it's all yours.
Yeah.
So, guy who
You
had
didn't know that beforehand?
no training
No.
in
Yeah.
benevolence ministry. I have a master, I have all sorts of education and zero in benevolence training. That's called on-the-job training
That
for a
is.
reason.
That's
So-
what most ministry is. You've got whatever training you think, and then you're in it.
That's exactly.
Yes.
We're like, nah, actually, we're not using any of that. So, yeah. So we started into Mountain Vision.
Yep.
And Mountain Visions happened for how long?
4 years.
Yeah. Okay.
So I spent 2 years learning how to do it, figuring out what I'm doing. 2 years then trying to figure out trying to figure out how do I get how do we get rid of it? Like, how do we functionally keep this ministry alive and pass it off to a healthy local church?
Right.
So it is
Right.
currently functioning at the Calvary Chapel Church in downtown Greenville.
Yep.
They are thriving. It's doing fine. But a lot of renovations and stuff to make that happen. During that time, I also started building relationships with local pastors, working with the local Baptist Association,
Yep.
teaching in their seminary extension, which was part of trying to figure out how to do pastor and church leader training. Got a group of pastors and did some preaching classes here, which meeting in my house. Started a Jobs for Life program to try to go, okay, how do we do benevolence ministry better? These people actually need jobs, not just handouts.
Right.
So we started a ministry called Jobs for Life, which is a national ministry, but we started it here, or started a branch here where we did job training, which is gospel-centered job training, and saw some neat results out of that. And ultimately, knew I didn't want to be in benevolence ministry forever. So as soon as it was stable, we were ready to leave it. And at which point we ended up at West Hills, which is next step. The biggest question as a guy in ministry trying to do pastor and church leader training is why can't you do pastor and church leader training how do you do this if you've never actually been a pastor? Fair. Yes, I've been in full-time ministry for 12 years, 15 years at that point, but I'd never been a lead pastor.
Yeah.
And the guy at the Baptist Association said, well, would you be interested in coming and pastoring a small church in Jonesboro?
Yeah.
And so we decided to take on pastoring West Hills Baptist Church in Jonesboro. And
Right across the street from
West Side Christian Church.
Westside Christian Church, as
and
well
the
as the
Wetlands Water Park.
Wetlands
Wetlands
Water
Water
Park.
Park.
Yes, I was going for
You were
wetlands
going
because
for
that
Wetlands.
was
Hey,
that
I'm
would be
thinking
what
you're
people would
Christian church
recognize.
people.
Yes.
Like, hey, they're in your same category. So
Because
yes,
5 people watching would know Westside Christian Church.
The rest of them would know West. So we're right across from Wetlands Water
Just
Park.
in case.
If you've ever been to Wetlands and gone, hey, there's this big pretty field of flowers across the street. There's actually a church.
You all
building.
planted.
I planted the field of flowers.
At that church.
At
and
that
the
church.
Field.
So we needed to develop a outreach program for a dying church. And so we built the largest community garden in East Tennessee. It has about 90 raised beds. It's all drip irrigated. Planted the whole, yards are a pain. Okay, so having a huge front yard to mow as a small church is a challenge.
Yeah.
Why don't we plant flowers in the front yard? So we planted the whole front yard in flowers to make
Yeah.
it a photo op for the community, but also so we didn't have to mow it.
Had community groups come and learn stuff. Did
And-
VBS there.
Yep.
Yep.
Whole nine. It's
The
cool.
whole nine.
Yeah.
So, and we were there for 6 years.
And toward the end of that 6 years, wedding venue began. And here you are at First Christian Church. And it's today. And what have you learned about parenting while in ministry and being a family while in ministry?
I would say we have learned a lot about
And by parenting, I don't just mean parenting, but parenting in marriage, being a family.
Family.
However, yeah.
So I would say one of the biggest lessons that we've learned is that our biggest ministry is our 3 children for a season.
Yeah.
That God has entrusted us with those individuals, and they're only in our home.
Not for very long.
Yeah, for
Yep.
such a brief period of time.
Yep.
And we have learned that prioritizing family, time with family, is super important. Bringing them along in ministry and including them,
Yes, indeed.
so that whatever we're doing, they're doing with us.
Yes.
It was that way in ministry, but also even now with the wedding venue, they're with us a lot there.
Pause real quick.
Yeah.
That, I believe, is huge for a ministry family.
Yeah.
It used to be a bit more like separated and keep the kids quiet and away from the stuff the adults are doing. I don't mean just at church, but I mean for ministry families. For me, growing up in the fishbowl of ministry life,
Yeah.
that was a huge piece of me, of it being fully integrated in my life, and not something I resented and was angry about and felt left out from.
Yeah.
That's a key piece.
I would say, one of the challenges to being at West Hills, especially in a COVID world, So before COVID, we had grown to, we had about 30 people coming to church. So we'd started with 10. We had about 30. Had a group of people with all, like, a bunch of small kids, probably 10 under 10. Like, COVID happened and all of that went away. Just full disclosure, all of that went away. So we were down to 6 whole people, and who I dearly love. But, like, for our family and parenting and doing family, like, isolation is the enemy.
I was going to say that was isolated.
We were
was the
super,
first word I thought of.
we were super isolated.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
part of the transition to First Christian has been having our kids be around other kids and having our family be around other families that love Jesus and are trying to find and follow Jesus. And it's been super helpful for us.
Bonus points for inserting that.
Well done. Thank you. Yes. Could you name anything about the team code? No, I'm just kidding.
No, but I got the next steps memorized.
There we go.
I ain't got the team code yet.
Okay. We'll start with the 7 habits. That's good.
But so parenting is a team sport, but being in a healthy church gives us a chance to interact with our kids in new ways, like, and answer questions that they have out of Sunday school. Because for my kids' lives, most of their memorable lives, like, I was their Sunday school teacher and their pastor and their discipler and all of those things. And now Hosea comes home from Sunday school on Sunday mornings, and we're talking about his Sunday school lesson, and that's good. And Lily's coming home from youth group on Wednesday nights, and we're talking in the car on the way home, and that's good. And so, like, there's a lot of health in community when you are parenting and doing marriage together.
I mean, and there's that saying, like, parenting takes a village. Like, it's true. Everyone needs a village of support.
Absolutely.
So.
And for kids like Lily, who, if y'all haven't met Lily, you will at some point, because she's like, she's the happiest little human. But, like, her in isolation is, like, awful. Okay, she's got to be, COVID was really super hard on her. It's like, she's got to be around people. And so giving her an outlet to serve, like,
it feels awesome.
Awesome. I mean, she is so thrilled to be serving Jesus on Sunday mornings, man.
Thank you for that entree to what you've heard me already say a couple times, which is, like, the very first Sunday she was serving in Kidsmen. I walk in at Afton, and I'm just like, hey, how's everybody doing? And she's over there, and she goes, hey, Pastor Scott, today's my first day serving. And she was super excited, and I was like, yes.
Yeah.
Now every day when she walks out, she's like, boom, high five, served today. It's great.
Shit, like, and parenting and marriage in a healthy church is easier. Is that the right word? It's better. It's a better scenario.
I think, you're just more supported. So.
The isolation's very difficult.
Isolation's hard.
For ministry families, period.
And I would say that's one thing that we learned in the end, like, was that if we had known. So one of the statistics we found out at the very end is that if a small church has less than 40 people as a core base, even when you're trying to revitalize it, it's highly unlikely that it's going to succeed, because you just
never
don't
come back.
Yeah.
I mean,
it would have been nice if we'd known that, because we started with like 10. So, just things that we learned. If we had known, we probably would have thought differently about it, or even approached it from having more of a base.
I certainly would have taken a different approach to starting in the beginning. But church revitalization is an important process.
Oh, absolutely.
But
sure.
Like, there are better methodologies than the ones that we took.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone going into church revitalization?
Take
having
30 healthy people with you. Like, don't go by yourself. I mean, statistically, the healthiest church revitalization efforts are basically church plants and old buildings, where you're taking 30 to 40. I mean, you may have 10, like, in your original core group.
Sure.
But take
Jesus had 12.
30 people with you.
He was Jesus.
And go plant with those 30 people. And start with your community of healthy believers.
Yeah.
And you would understand this, because even with South Green,
you're taking 125 people to South Green, which is really super wise.
Right.
So, that's the idea.
Right. Yep.
Exactly. Let's talk about some wedding venue stuff real quick here, because we've got a number of questions. So some quick wedding venue stuff. Talked about how it started. Blah, da, 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 da. What's the most rewarding part? The most rewarding part of hosting weddings. And then we'll get to the drama later. Because every wedding has drama.
You know, you get to touch people on this day that's super duper important. And
Yeah,
so
sure.
being able to be a blessing to them, to help them have an awesome day,
Yeah.
and to connect into their lives on a special day, like it creates an inroad for a relationship potentially later, especially as marriage doesn't go exactly like they thought it would.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just beginning to connect, it's a great connecting point with people
Yeah.
as it's starting.
Cool.
For me, I think I do a lot of the day of coordination. So I really, because I'm an introvert, I don't do like large crowds very well, but I love interacting with the bride and her mom or a family member, you know, on a closer one-on-one basis and
Yeah.
really getting to know them.
Sure.
And helping to organize. Not everyone's organized, so helping to organize the day.
not everyone's organized. They don't come like really well organized every
No.
time.
Most of the time, not. But that's okay because
Huh.
That's what you're there for.
I love organization. So just helping their day run smoothly, taking
Yeah,
that stress
right.
off of them.
Yeah, because you're sort of helping absorb what is very high expectation day.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
They all come in with high
they do,
Okay.
don't they?
Like,
Yes.
What is the most difficult and frustrating part of wedding venue ownership, leadership?
I know
I
what
think.
that is. But
Oh, I know. Not. It's never the couples that are getting married, but it's the guests that come that don't necessarily respect or appreciate the fact that this is our farm, our place, we've
Right,
worked
right, right.
really hard to make it pretty, and it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't stay pretty on its own, and so like it can be challenging helping guests to understand that. You know, hey, we have rules about don't climb on that, don't jump on that, don't drink beer in the parking lot. You know, I mean, these
So that's the
rules
stuff
exist.
you walk around, run around saying.
Yeah, so the stressful part is confronting Uncle Jeff in the
Get off of
parking
that!
lot with a beer, going, "You can't
Uncle
do that here,
Jeff.
man."
65-year-old Uncle Jeff.
That's exactly right. It's like that.
I don't know
that
why
part
he's
is
65 in my mind. Sorry.
no.
Uncle Jeff.
Yes.
No.
Yeah. Whatever uncle it is, like it's that part is the most stressful part is making sure that everybody stays safe, has a good time, and doesn't break.
because you
anything.
obviously don't want to like have any type of like conflict or you don't want to like chastise people on a wedding day. So it's just this hard
And
line.
I'm an avoider.
Yeah.
That's saying something.
So I have to go in there.
It's sanctification for you,
That's
clearly.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's challenging.
Good stuff.
But I think it is hard when it's your personal, it's somewhere that your heart and soul is invested in. I mean, we put our heart and soul into the renovation and
Right.
everything that's happened and transformed there. And so, we're not Walmart that when you walk in, it's a corporate entity that's kind of emotionally removed from that particular store.
Right.
For us, it is.
It's our space.
It's our space. It's part of our family. So, yeah.
So will you be building any more lakes soon?
No more big projects. No more big projects, including no more lakes that leak.
Okay, no more lakes. And why do you hate Walmart? I'm just kidding.
I don't hate Walmart. It's just the first thing that popped in my head.
I'm just kidding.
Large corporate entity.
Large corporate entity.
Yeah.
Yes. Where does Lily get her hugginess from? Someone asked.
Our family is very huggy.
There you go.
Yep.
Okay.
We actually do have a sign in our kitchen that says "Bear Hugs Given Here." We bought it on our road trip when we were pregnant with Lily. So,
Cool.
anyway.
She comes by natural.
What are some things in life and leadership and ministry you've learned that have come hard and have been, long-term hard lessons to have learned, which we all have?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would say, for me personally, broken people are not a reflection of a perfect Savior. We can,
That's well said. That's gold.
I personally, we all can be hurt
Yeah.
by each other
Right.
because we're all broken and sinful. But I think too often we displace that onto God, onto Jesus,
Yeah.
as having allowed that or as being like that. And so for me, a hard lesson I've learned, or just a good lesson, is just that broken people aren't a reflection of a perfect Savior. That He is perfect and He is good.
Mm-hmm.
And just because people in the church
Mm-hmm.
have hurt me,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't mean that my Savior is going to hurt me.
That's right. That's good. Because whether you're talking about people in the church, which, you sort of expect, sort of like you said early on, like, all these hypocrites here. I almost chimed in and said, yeah, what were you expecting? But you think these people who follow the Lord and are supposed to be growing in this process of sanctification become like Christ, you think, like, even they hurt me and hurt one another. Even they are sinners.
Well,
and so you expect it to be different. And it doesn't help ministering to one another or other people without that perspective in mind.
Yeah.
How else do you care for people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, and then I hurt people too. It's like I'm the same imperfect person. So,
Right.
We are all in process. We are all struggling and waging war against the world, against our flesh and our sin nature.
Good stuff.
Okay.
Follow that.
Busyness is the tool the devil uses to distract us from what's important.
Okay.
And so relationships take time. Intimate relationships with our spouses take time.
Yes.
Healthy relationships with church and friends at church.
Yes.
Accountability relationships where we're talking about, hey, regen. Regen is not if you told me how many hours I was going to spend in the book, I might not have said yes. Okay.
I think I probably said, you can do it in 30 minutes a day, 5 times a week. It might be 45. It might be an hour and a half.
Okay. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's like, but it takes time to not just do the bookwork, but to actually engage with those guys and to talk through the issues. And like we live in the busiest society on earth. Pastor, venue owner, lawnmower, all of those things, as somebody and kid who's in the theater at Tuscaloosa, Missouri.
Yeah, dad, husband,
all the
chauffeur of kids.
So,
yes.
For us, being very, so our current kind of, especially the last year, it's how do we slow down,
Right.
carve out, leave everything aside that doesn't really matter and understand that what matters is people. Like our relationship with Jesus, our relationship with each other, so those priorities, and then like our relationship with others at church, like these other believers in our lives that we've got to spend time with, in order to allow them in, so that they can be a sanctifying voice, but also so that when their life goes to pieces, we can encourage them and support them. But busyness is the biggest enemy. So figuring out how to shut out what doesn't matter, so that we can invest in what does in terms of people.
Yeah.
Man, that's been the biggest lesson in the last year.
That's huge.
So.
Huge. I think one way I characterize what you just said, which is all good, I'm just trying to say that what we end up doing, as you said, is we let all the other stuff sort of rule us. Like they're leading, all those things are leading us.
Yeah.
And frankly, for most folks, a lot of those things are good things.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with those things. In fact, we can have sanctifying language around lots of those things.
Yep.
And yet, still miss, I don't know, time with God in the Word to like have Him speak to us every day.
Yeah.
And miss the important stuff so that what we have in Christ as the perfect Savior, and not the other people around us who are flawed, including ourselves, chief of sinners, so that who God is and what He says is informing that other stuff, and it's leading it, so that as we're doing it, it isn't just making us crazy and leading us. And then suddenly we find, I not only don't really know these people around me, because you put an emphasis on community. I not only don't really actually know these people around me that I've called my friends, I don't really even know my own wife or kids well anymore. And I guess I don't have a relationship with God that I thought I was saying yes to 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Like people get to this place where suddenly they're like, what has happened?
Well, and you actually said in a sermon, one of the past sermons in John, I don't remember which week it was, but you were talking about the work. And the work is to believe.
Right.
And so anyway, it was actually very impactful. God used that in my life hugely because
Cool. Yeah.
we've been reflecting
A lot
on the verse, "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest.
Yes,
Take my yoke." And so I
A
kept
yoke's a
saying,
thing you put on people to do work.
to do work.
Work.
Right.
So
And so I
Well,
was
not
like,
people, I guess.
Yes.
Animals.
what is the work? I was like, what is the work, Daniel?
Right,
like,
right,
what is
right.
the work? What are we supposed to...
So good.
The work is to believe. There is no actual work that is required. It is belief. And so God is so much about relationship and about knowing us and us knowing Him. But we put so much of an emphasis on doing,
Yes.
actually our production.
Right. So if the if the work is rest,
Yeah.
then you can't do the fruitful work of be fruitful and multiply unless you're resting.
Right.
Yeah. So we've had this other, we're going past time, but like Sabbath is a big deal. We've not done it well. Like,
Yeah.
but one of the side effects of not taking a Sabbath is you don't learn how to rest because you work all the time. So we just, like, especially for entrepreneurs, like who the phone dings all the time, like we work around the clock.
Right.
And so, or in ministry, no different. So in doing both,
Don't point
like,
at me.
it's just like, I'm just saying, like, this is true.
Why did you
Like,
point at me?
So because, like, did she
Why are
not
you a jerk
when did
to
we
me right
text you
now?
last night?
I'm
I'm just like, so being able to go, okay, if you're habitually going all the time and you
Yeah.
never take time off, then you don't ever learn how to slow down, to have a serious conversation with people, to read your Bible in a non-distracted manner, like, and to go, okay, can I let God work in my life? Am I willing to sit here without my phone dinging and just reflect on God's word?
Yes.
Like, and
As if He's actually God and in control,
Yeah.
and He doesn't need you or the work you're doing in order for His work to move forward.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff. So good, y'all. Thank you for coming to our coffee convo.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you for having us.
We haven't been doing that at the end, but I think we should do that at the end.
Oh,
Oh,
That's good.
Yeah.
We're the first. We've
It's a
instituted
cheer.
it.
We
there you go.
instituted.
There you go. New cheers.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.